Welcome to Effortless Conversations, the Princeton Mortgage podcast highlighting what makes our company and the housing industry so great: the people. Let's get started.
Welcome to the podcast. This is Effortless Conversations. You've got Joe from the marketing team here today. Today we're talking to one of Princeton Wholesale's top producing AEs, account executives, Josh Teti. First off, happy Friday. And I guess just like, how's everything going? How's Q1 going? 15 days into it. What's good with you, Josh?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you, Joe. Princeton in general. Number one, a podcast, something like this, I think is very unique in our industry. I don't think a lot of people, a lot of companies focus on things like this to like get insight into people actually in these jobs, in this industry. It's extremely unique. So, and, I'm a big podcast listener, and I've always, quote unquote, dreamed of being on a podcast. So thank you guys for having me. Really looking forward to this conversation. Yeah. 2021 is here. Q1. Yeah. We're 15 days in, and it seems like it's already been 3 months, to be honest with you. It didn't really slow down at all, obviously we'll get into my history and things like that, but having been in this industry for, nearly 10 years, this is the time of year that, it's typically just slower, right? Everyone's coming off the holidays. Everyone's still kind of in the lull. Business isn't really that crazy. This year is completely different. It hasn't slowed down at all. It actually is almost picked up since last year, which, being someone in my position, and just being in this industry, that's something that we're excited about. It's not something that we're used to, but we're really excited about it. So it's going great, man. Business in general, like I just mentioned, is there. It's increased. But what I'm more excited about is just the upcoming year, because we have so many exciting things happening. We have a lot of, technology enhancements, process enhancements, hiring, recruiting, everything like that coming up to embrace for 2021. So that's what I'm really excited about. Yeah, and I'm just ready to get rocking and rolling, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming off the heels of 2020, which was like record-breaking year for the mortgage industry, just housing industry alone, and Princeton Wholesale, I know like we would break our origination record for a month, and then the following month we'd break it again. Like, I think the company Princeton Wholesale just had growth in so many different areas, not just, originations, just there's been more additions to the team. We've been focusing on the marketing a little bit closer. What do you feel is like your major contribution to that? I mean, obviously I know your production numbers, but like being in like a leadership or, somewhat of a leadership, or your veteran presence in the wholesale side of things, what do you think your contribution would be to that?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right. Last year was insane. Like you mentioned, every month we were setting records, and, when you're in it, like at that time, you don't really appreciate it as much. But when you look back on it and say, wow, like we really came such a long way just over, and it wasn't even over 12 months. It was probably more over like 9 months, which is so cool. Yeah. I mean, my contribution, taking the production out of it, I think it's exactly what you said, Joe. It's just it's my overall experience that I was able to bring to the team. I just started as an account executive in Princeton Wholesale last January. So if you just look at that, you're saying, oh, well, you've only been doing this for a little over a year. But the thing is I came from just so many other positions, so many other roles, other companies within the mortgage industry. And I brought all that experience and all that knowledge to my account executive role. And I think that has really helped me, and has also helped the team, because, I'm able to answer questions and able to help, new hires and new trainees and things like that. But that's really helped me dive into it, just, full bore, as fast as I possibly can, because I was confident in my experience and in my abilities. And then you just kind of figure things out on its own. So, I think, people have leaned on me, and people have looked at me as someone who's been around for a while, not just at Princeton, but, in the industry in general. And, they say, okay, well, maybe this guy has a little bit of experience. Let me lean on him a little bit. And I think, like I said, taking the production out of it, just being that leader and that veteran within the team, that has brought me a lot of joy. It's been really fun just being a part of this department that has grown so fast, like I said, over the past 9 months.
Yeah, man. So you said you've only really been in like the sales side of things for about a year. I think you said January. So yeah, technically
Yeah.
1 year.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary.
Thank
So
you.
I guess go back to prior to being in sales and maybe just kind of explain to us like what you were doing at Princeton Wholesale or even prior to being at Princeton Wholesale, a little bit of your history, and then what made you want to get into the sales side of things.
Yeah, so let's just start with my history. I think my story is really unique, and I think hopefully someone listening out there can look at my story and maybe it'll inspire them and things like that. But so I graduated college back in 2011, and just like a lot of other college seniors, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I know that I wanted to have an idea and at least have something secured, when I graduated. So, opportunities came up. I think I found the company that I started working for through my college career website or whatever it was. And I found, I majored in finance. So I knew that like, okay, I kind of want to do something in the business money aspect realm. And I came across this posting for Providence Funding, and it was a mortgage company, and it was an entry level position. And it's, I read about it. I said, I don't know anything about mortgages, but let me interview. Let me find out a little bit about it. So I did. And guess who my interviewer was? It was Matt Joy. He's the one that recruited me back at Providence Funding almost 10 years ago. It'll actually be 10 years in May. He recruited me for the entry level position, which was a servicing, basically a customer service role. Now, I didn't know what that was. I was told I was going to be on the phone a lot. I was going to have to answer phone calls. They were going to teach me basically everything I needed to know. And I was just going to help customers, right? Help borrowers.
Sure.
And that's all I knew. And, coming out of college, I was going to make some money. So I was like, let's do it. So I started there. Another cool little fun fact is I started the same day at the same position as Brandon Connectiony, which is, one of our underwriters here at Princeton.
So hold on. Before we go any further, anybody listening that doesn't know, Matt Joy is Senior Vice President of Wholesale Lending, and Brandon works at Princeton as well. So these are household names around the company. So
yeah, exactly. So so I started the same day as him, same position. We jumped into it, and I think I had like a week of training, and then I just jumped on the phones and started answering questions. Little did I realize at the time is, so this is 2011. This is right off the heels of the recession, of the housing crisis. The people that I were answering phones for and the questions I were answering were people that were affected by that. People that were in foreclosure, people that were missing their mortgage payments, people that were underwater. A lot of difficult conversations, right? So
what were those conversations like? What were you like hearing day to day? Was it like being bombarded with like these stories of just like really bad? Like, was it all day long, or like just kind of walk us through like a day of like, talking to those type of clients or customers?
Yeah, it was all day long. It was from 8 to 5. Basically, the phone lines opened up at 8 o'clock, and you had your desk, you had your cubicle, you had your headset, and you would just, we had the system set up where a phone call would come through your computer, and you would just answer it. We had our system set up so like they would tell you their loan number, you would type in the loan number, and then basically like, what questions do you have? A lot of them were easy. Hey, I sent my payment in, did it post yet? That stuff's easy. But the difficult questions were, hey, I just got a notice in the mail saying that my loan is in foreclosure. What do I do? Right? Or, hey, I just got a notice saying that my house is going to auction next week.
Yeah.
What do I do?
That's a tough call to take, right? Because you probably feel really awful for these people, and yet you still have to kind of be a representative of the company. So
exactly, you were that. Yeah, it was. It really opened my eyes to number one, what was going on around me, right? What actually happened a few years before that was causing all this. It really made me have to learn and understand what's going on first. And then number two, yeah, you're right. You felt extremely terrible for these people. A lot of these people, it wasn't their fault at the end of the day. And those conversations I still reference today that really molded me into the relationship type of person and the servicing type of person that I am today. Sure. I think without that experience, without having those tough phone calls, without feeling, number one, empathetic for these people, but also very grateful that, a lot of them you were able to help, right? A lot of them you were able to answer their questions. I still remember not specific details of phone calls, but like borrowers calling me and saying, Josh, Thank you so much. You helped me. You have no idea how nervous I was. Like just hearing that feedback from someone makes you think, especially, this is my first job in the real world. It makes you think like, wow, like you're actually making an impact on someone's life. And it was great. It was a wonderful experience. It was tough, but I wouldn't want any other way to enter this industry. I think that was extremely unique for me, because like I said, it started to build the foundation and the building blocks to where I am today. Yeah, so that was Provident Funding. That was back in 2011. I was there for about 4.5 years. I quickly, in the customer service role, obviously we had leads, we had managers and things like that. I quickly moved up into a lead role. So I was managing other customer service representatives, servicing analysts is what we call them. And, that was another new, wonderful experience for me. Before that, obviously, I was never in a manager or leadership role. So I had to learn, a lot about what that meant. I was given a lot of responsibility being 22, 23 years old, which was great. Not a lot of people, I looked at that and I said, wow, there's really no one else. Like when I would tell people that I was managing people, like my friends and family, they'd be like, wow, Josh, really? Like you just entered the workforce like a year ago.
Right.
So that was really cool. So I was there for about 4.5 years. I didn't stay specifically in the customer service position for all 4.5 years, but I was still in some type of servicing role throughout Providence Funding, which was great. Yeah, it really laid the groundwork for my experience, my knowledge of the mortgage industry, and it really started to create a passion for the mortgage industry because, like I mentioned earlier, when I was graduating college, I didn't know anything about it. It was something interesting to me. If I would have had a different mindset, I think going into it, I probably wouldn't be here. I probably wouldn't be in this industry, but I embraced it. I learned everything I could, and then I started to develop that passion. After that 4.5 years, I moved over to another mortgage company. This was a different experience for me because Provident Funding had been around for decades before that. They were very, very well established. The company that I moved over to, Ethos Lending, they were brand new. They were a brand new player in the game, brand new player in the industry, and they were already making a lot of noise, right? They were, considered one of the best technology mortgage companies out there, one of the best priced mortgage companies out there. So that was another great experience for me because, again, it was something new. I was used to the veteran company, the old school company, kind of the way to do it. Coming in, had an opportunity to leave that and go to Ethos Lending and just experience more of a startup atmosphere, which is really, really cool. Now, my role within Provident, when I went to Ethos, it completely switched. I left servicing and I went into the origination side of it. Now, I wasn't an originator in terms of a loan officer, but I was on if you look at a loan, servicing is the end of it. I was in the middle. Like I moved myself towards the middle of the loan actually getting processed and things like that. And I worked in the closing department, which is, right at the end of the loan, you want to close on your loan. It's the department that handles all that. So I had an opportunity there, moved into it. Again, it was very, very similar and parallel to Provident Funding, where it was a new opportunity. It was a new role, nothing that I really knew about, but I had this mindset that I was going to go into it and embrace it and learn everything I possibly could and want to be the best at it. So I entered that role. And again, much like my customer service days at Provident, I, was elevated to a lead position, to a manager position. So again, I had another opportunity to manage people and use what I learned at Provident and just use what I learned from a leadership perspective to manage a team. And that was another really unique experience to me because not only am I leading people, but I'm also leading people in a different department that I didn't really know anything about a couple years before. And so that was Ethos Lending. Ethos Lending to Princeton was
wait, before you go on to Princeton, did Matt follow you or I think Matt was at Ethos too, right? Matt Joy?
Yeah, sorry, that's one thing I forgot to mention. So Matt Joy went to Ethos. I followed Matt Joy to Ethos.
Okay.
I didn't work directly with Matt or under Matt, but we worked in the same Pittsburgh office. Same thing with Brandon Connection, which is I mentioned with my time back at Provident. Same thing with, and Joe, you're probably going to want to plug these guys a little bit. Matt Fromer and Charles Howe, who are also working here at Princeton. They also worked at Provident. They also worked at Ethos. So you can kind of start to see the story kind of forming here between our core group of people kind of working together throughout these three companies.
So were you guys leaving Provident at the same time to go to Ethos? Was it a joint decision or Or was it like one just kind of followed the other, or one recommended the other to the company and just kind of piggybacked off each other? Or what was that process kind of like? Because you
Yeah,
guys
it
have been
wasn't.
stuck to, like what you're saying is like now you've been together for like 10 years at 3 different companies.
Yeah, it's crazy, and that's why like this story, when you start to tell it and like really think about it, it's extremely unique, and it's an opportunity that like I am super grateful for, because I've formed this little mini core group of, it's almost like a mini family, right? That we've worked together for so long. But yeah, so it wasn't a joint decision. It was just, I think everyone kind of everyone was in different areas and different positions and roles at Providence. And I think it was just one of those situations where like, okay, hey, what's going on over there? That kind of looks interesting. I see, oh, that person kind of left. That person says it's really interesting. Let me talk to them. So that's kind of how it played out, right? It was natural, but obviously you look back on it, it's like, well, all these things are, meant to be. All these things were supposed to happen, because fast forward to what we're doing today. We're a part of we're a part of something great throughout those companies, building something together, building those relationships, and just kind of carrying them along.
Yeah, it's funny, like just kind of thinking back, because we had a conversation with Mark Gordon, sales director on the retail side of things. He was talking about how when he was moving around, he had like Brett with him, who's a loan officer here, or retail sales manager, and Dave, who works here, Dave Trissler. And like it seems like, they had that core group that they kind of carried around with them, that like, had good synergy, or
Yeah.
whatever the word might be. And it seems like you guys kind of have that too with your core group in Pittsburgh. And it's funny, because when we talk to brokers, and like it seems like the common trend is that they're all like saying sort of what you're kind of saying, where it's like Princeton Wholesale has this family feel. Everybody feels like connected, or the communication is key with like, talking to Josh or Matt, or whoever it might be. So it's really interesting just to see that like there's something to be said for, carrying a group with you, or like being in the same tribe, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's something that it's so natural that, like you said, other people start to recognize, and it starts to rub off on other people. And, your comment about brokers kind of, one of the reasons why they work with us is because they feel like they're part of a family. And I think you're absolutely right. That's just a reflection of us, right? Our little family that we built over the years. And that's how we treat everyone else, right? Regardless if you started yesterday, or if you're a new broker that just signed up with us, or if you're a broker that has been working with us for years and years, like we still deliver that family-like atmosphere and that family-like feel.
Sure. Yeah, and it seems to be obviously paying off with the production in 2020 and going into 2021. So you were about to tell us how you ended up at Princeton Mortgage and Princeton Wholesale, and how everybody came along too. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that beginning of that journey, where you're at now?
Yeah, so I've been with Princeton in general, Princeton Mortgage, for a little over 3.5 years. So if you just do the math, back in like July, August of 2017. Rich always tells the story about how, Princeton was in kind of a transition phase around that time, and they wanted to look out and reach out into new opportunities and new channels. And him and, whoever was handling the recruiting at that time sent out like a mass mailer to a bunch of different sales managers, just around the country. And Matt Joy received one of these mass mailers and letters, by accident, I think, right?
I think I had the wrong name on it, right?
Yeah, like, why do I want to go to Pittsburgh? I don't want to have an office in Pittsburgh. There's nothing there, right? So it was by chance. It was just by accident. And I think it was one of those things that was just like the right time, right place, right time situation. Obviously being extremely close with Matt throughout those years, and having followed him to 2 companies essentially, it was an opportunity that he got, and we talked about it, and we said, wait, listen, this could be something really cool. This could be something really big. It was still very early on, right? And like there was still a lot of unknowns, but we were younger than we are now. When you're younger like that, you look at it and you say, okay, well, what's the next step for me? Should I take a certain risk? Or am I just comfortable doing what I'm doing? And do I see myself at this company for the next 5-10 years? And it was just those decisions that kind of went into it. And we said, hey, what the heck? Let's see what it's all about. So I remember I don't know exactly what time frame this was. It was right around that August, July time frame. We just moved forward in the conversations. We said, yeah, listen, let's just see what this is all about. Rich and Jim and a couple other people drove across the state to Pittsburgh, and we all just met in a conference room just to get to know each other, right? It wasn't necessarily like a formal job interview or anything like that. But we just sat in a conference room and we just learned about what Princeton Mortgage was, who they were, what their plans were, where they wanted to take this, yada, yada, yada. You know, the initial idea was, listen, Princeton was just a retail, right? Was just a retail shop with loan officers. They wanted to move into the wholesale space.
Right.
The wholesale was something that we all knew, like it was our bread and butter. You know, Matt Joy was extremely involved in wholesale, both back, you know, at Providence in Ethos. So he had, you know, ton of experience, ton of already built relationships, things like that. Wholesale was something that I was also very passionate about. I love the professional business to business relationship side of it. That was something that I really enjoyed, that I really loved. If I wasn't doing mortgages, I'd probably be doing something very similar to that business to business relationship
Gotcha.
opportunity. So yeah, so we sat in this conference room for hours and hours, and Rich just laid out what his thoughts were and really where he envisioned taking this. And then he asked us questions about ourselves. And one thing I thought was super unique with Rich, and it was something that I wasn't familiar with or that I ever experienced before, was the questions that he was asking were like, you genuinely felt that like he cared about where you came from, that he cared about your story, like that he,
yeah.
right, that, you know, he cared about your family and he cared about where you went to school. It wasn't really about, well, what's your experience in the mortgage industry? Obviously, yeah, that mattered, but you just got the sense of like, he genuinely cared about you as a person, and he asked questions, and he was extremely, you know, involved and like truly wanted to learn about you. And just, I still remember that thought of just being like, wow, you know, here's a guy who's a little bit older than me, right? Rich is, you know, I think at that time he had just turned 30, or maybe he was 31, but he has this demeanor to him that I've never experienced before from someone in a leadership role, in a CEO role of a company, right? It was like he made us, and he made me feel like I meant something, right? That the information that I was sharing was actually important to him. It wasn't
not just
a
a number,
transaction.
or not just a number or employee number X, Y, you know, Z, whatever. You kind of, he wanted to know some information, or, you know, was really taking your input and, you know, using it, applying it in some way.
Exactly. And I also thought, listen, if this guy is willing to drive across the state and take a risk on a bunch of guys from Pittsburgh, I should look at that as inspiration to just take a risk with a company like Princeton. You know what I mean? And that's really, at the end of the day, that's really what drove our decision to come on board and start up wholesale from scratch, from pretty much nothing.
So Rich and Jim come to Pittsburgh. You guys are sitting in a conference room for hours, sharing a plate of pierogies or Pittsburgh delicacies, whatever you guys are eating there the whole time. You guys decide to move forward with Princeton Wholesale. What is like? Tell us about like the next week, next month. What is like fast forward, and just like what's that process look like? I know Matt was like saying he was like sending out handwritten notes to like all these different brokers trying to get somebody. Why don't you tell us a little bit about those like really early days?
Yeah, so those really early days are awesome to think, you know, to see where we're at right now, to look back and see actually where we started. It's really cool because Rich, when we did all the details, ironed everything out, and we basically shook hands and said, all right, we're going to do this. Rich's first reaction was like, all right, here you go, guys, go for it. Right. This is yours. Do it, you know, do your thing. Right. Because that's why he brought us on board. He trusted us. He believed in us, and he thought we were the right guys to do it. So hearing that and being like, okay, we actually have to do this. Like, we actually have to build something. Like, where do we start? I think we all, yeah, it's risky and it's scary at first because you don't really know what the right decision is, or, you know, you don't want to mess up, especially starting out. But we all just dove into it. We said, listen, let's trust ourselves. Let's be confident. They sent us out laptops, and that's all we had. We didn't have an office. For the first, I want to say, couple months, we worked out of each other's apartments. You know, we would work at, you know, Matt Joy's apartment, you know, 1 week. The next week we'd go to Brandon's. The next week we'd come to mine. And we would, you know, all of us would just meet up, and we would just say, okay, what are we doing today? Where do we start? And it was really cool because it really was a blank canvas, and we really just did what we thought was right. And obviously something worked out, right? We were doing something right because of what we were able to grow this to. But we really started at zero. We didn't have anything. We didn't really have a system. We didn't, all we really had was ourselves, and then our broker relationships that we built over the years. So that's who we reached out to, right? We reached out to these brokers and say, hey, listen, here's what we're doing now. We would love for you to be a part of it. It's going to take us a little time to get up and running, but we want to build this with you. We want you to be our partner. And that's where we started. I remember going out to corporate, which was in Pennington, New Jersey, probably about a couple of weeks after we started. And we all drove out there just to meet everyone and just to kind of game plan and see meet everyone and everything like that. And I remember walking into the office, and it was kind of like this. It was two buildings, and it was 2 stories. The top half of the building was Princeton Mortgage. So I remember walking in there and walking into it, and it was this massive room. There was a set of cubicles everywhere. There were only a couple people there, and there were boxes piled up in the office of who knows what. And I look to the right, and I see this whiteboard, literally this big whiteboard with a bunch of numbers and names written on it. And we asked, we're like, what is this? And we were told that, oh, that's our pipeline. That's a list of loans that we're working on. And I just remember thinking, that's your pipeline. There's, mortgage companies out there spending millions and millions of dollars on technology. And we walk into this place and we look, and the company's working off a whiteboard, right? To the point where okay, a new loan comes in, someone gets up, writes the loan number in, and there's the one department. Once that department's done working on it, they go up, they wipe off the whiteboard, put it in its next status. So, and then we saw these big boxes of papers next to everything. We said, what are these? And they, those are the loan files. We were working on paper files a little over 3.5 years ago. And it was just crazy to us because
what is your gut reaction when you see this? Are you like, oh, we got to get back to Pittsburgh. Let's go back to Ethos. What is your gut reaction when you're seeing this?
So it was a combination of, wow, this is really, I can't believe that this is how they're doing it right now. And then it was also a reaction of, okay, well, we have a lot of work to do, right? We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of updates to make. And then it was also a very exciting feeling because, again, it was kind of like this blank canvas. It was, Princeton had been operating this way, which, let me take a step back, hats off and to everyone, right? Before we came, that set that foundation, and that we're able to continue to keep Princeton up and running through those times, because you guys set the baseline, and you guys set, I talk a lot about building blocks and building foundations. Those people that came before us were the ones that do that. So I know we're kind of making fun of, the whiteboard and the paper files, but it was working for them, and they were able to get it to a point where we came in and we said, okay, how do we take this thing to the next level? And that's just what we did, right? We implemented a new system. We, started hiring and recruiting. We, started building out all of our broker references, like the application and things like that. And we just started piecing everything together to what we thought was right. And at that point, it was, let's say it was December 2017, maybe January 2018. We were ready to go, right? We said, let's just start rocking and rolling. Let's start taking loans. I remember our first loan that we ever got. And this is another cool story because, again, it's something that's a big milestone. So you remember all the details about it. I believe it was November 2017. So we were still in the building phase. We still didn't really have a system, all this stuff. We were like, okay, let's just, we had enough to be able to take a loan and to be able to see, if we were good at this, if we had to switch things up and everything like that. So we got a loan in November of, like I said, November 2017, I want to say. And it came from Lending Heights, which is, this is a quick little plug for Lending Heights. Jason Checo out there in Lending Heights. They were the first broker that sent us a loan. They were the first broker that signed up with us and said, hey, here's a loan. Let's start and, build something great together. And Lending Heights to this day is still one of our best brokers.
I knew that. Those names are the stuff of legends. I remember when I first met Matt, was at a conference in Atlantic City, and he introduced me to Jason Checo, and he was like, this guy sent us our first loan. And it was I've always known that name. I guess
Yeah.
because it's kind of like a unique name or whatever. But like I've always known that, so I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah, it's and again, it's one of those things that you'll just never forget. So we get this loan. Literally, Jason emails over a 3.2 file, the credit report for the borrower, and like a ad hoc fee sheet, and sends it to us. And we get it, and we say, okay, what do we do now? So we have this loan, right? We have like the makings of this loan, but we had no idea what to do. So I remember all of us, we filed into our conference room. Oh, by this time we had finally gotten an office, right? In Lawrenceville. So we were no longer working out of each other's, apartments or houses. But so we all file into this conference room, the 5 of us, and we call Pennington and we say, hey, listen, we have a loan. We don't know what to do with it. And we, all of us sit there. I remember, I think there's a picture. I have my laptop in my hand and we're all on this conference call and we're just sitting there going step by step on how to actually get this loan into the system, get the disclosures prepped, get the disclosures out, all that fun stuff. And I remember that so vividly because that was not only was it our first loan, but that was the start of something that you could just tell was great, right? We all cared. We all filed into the conference room. We all stayed there for hours and hours until we got this loan in, right? Every single last person. So it was just really unique. You could tell that we were all in, right? Everyone was all in on this, and we just wanted to make this thing right. We wanted to make this loan right. This first loan that we got, we wanted to make sure that we handled it right. And everything else after that's history, to be honest with you. That was kind of the kickoff of, okay, we're actually doing this, right? Up until that point, it was, okay, well, here you guys go, build out wholesale. Well, like, what did that really mean? Okay, well, let's do this, let's do that. But when you get that first loan in, you actually send it through and you get it through underwriting and you close it, you're like, wow, we're actually doing this. Like we actually built a wholesale department.
That's wild to think like 3.5 years ago, whatever November 2017 is. Like you guys got a loan and you were like, what do we do with this? You called like the Pennington office and like, I don't know, a couple months ago, Princeton Wholesale was on the same page of like National Mortgage Professional Magazine next to UWM, one of the biggest, wholesale lenders in the nation. It's just wild, like the rapid growth because you guys obviously got your shit together pretty quickly. Because now, I mean, you guys are obviously, I should say Princeton Wholesale, obviously up there with some of the household names of like the wholesale lending industry. So it's just wild, like the growth and how fast you guys got things rolling and got it together. So
yeah, it's
kudos to you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been quite it's been an amazing journey, to be honest with you. It's there's obviously with this rapid growth and how successful we've been comes with a lot of growing pains, right? So it's not the stories that I'm telling, all the good times and the memories. It hasn't always been good, but what I think is very unique about that and something that's been consistent is that even in the tough times, right, everyone bands together to figure out a solution or to get through those tough times from day one with our first loan all the way through today, right? And it's just the same, and it's this culture that Rich talked about the first time we met, right? This culture of integrity and this culture of grit and determination and hard work, and you're only going to go as far as you push yourself, and all those things that he talked about in that first meeting are still prevalent to today, and are still core values as to why not only Princeton Wholesale has grown so much, but just Princeton Mortgage in general has grown so much just over this past 3.5 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. So okay, around that time, what were you still working in like closing at Princeton, and then like you said about a year ago you wanted to start getting into sales. So talk about like that transition of what made you want to get into sales, and what was appealing about it, and how have you kind of embraced that? Because now you're obviously, if not, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but if not the top producing AE for the company. So talk about that journey a little bit, that transition in such a short period as well.
Yeah, so just the journey over the past, like we said, 3.5 years is has a ton of stories in its own. So around that time when we started wholesale, right, we were all kind of doing every job because we didn't have specific roles and things like that. I took on the role of being the disclosure desk, I guess you could say. Took over vendor management to try to build a relationship with the vendors that we had to sign up with and we had to start business with in order to grow this department. So that I oversaw that area of it, the initial LEs, the COCs, and things like that for wholesale. And then I want to say mid 2018, there was an opportunity for me to actually leave wholesale and go into retail side of things and be the processing manager for retail. So when we're talking about all the different roles that I've held and started with servicing and closing and things like that, this was another brand new role to me. I was never in processing. Now, I had developed certain knowledge about processing and what that is just throughout the years, just by being around it and working with people that were doing it. But I'd never been in processing, let alone a processing manager. So it was another new experience for me. But again, like everything else, I dove into it. I took it on, and I was an open book, and I just wanted to learn as much as I possibly could. And I wanted to develop that experience and develop those additional skill sets and things like that. Yeah. So I was the processing manager from, what was that, mid 2018 all the way through the end of 2019. Throughout that time, much like, wholesale basically started from scratch, and, we built that up. We were also doing the same thing in retail. We were kind of hitting the reset button in retail and trying to figure that out. And what does that look like? And are we just going to have a retail channel, or are we going to have retail and direct to consumer, or, all these different things, we want to grow our loan officer base, or are we just going to do that regionally, or are we going to look at other states? So like, it was a very similar experience being in retail at that time, because it was very much like wholesale starting to grow. And then in the background, wholesale still growing, wholesale still doing their thing, but my time and attention was in retail and processing. And that connected me again. Number one, that connected me directly with borrowers, which is what I was very used to back at Providence, right? Because I was taking phone calls from borrowers. So like that experience, when I mentioned that my experience in servicing really helped me, that was a direct correlation, right? I already knew how to communicate with borrowers. I already knew how to handle difficult situations. I already knew how to, solve problems on the go, and just really have that customer service background. So I think that really helped me in processing in general. And then you look at the leadership side of things, right? In the past, I had opportunities to manage teams. I had opportunities to be a leader. So, being the processing manager, I had that opportunity again. And then fast forward to, I would say right around getting towards the end of 2019, I really looked internally to myself, and I said, okay. And I kind of mapped out the next 3 to 5 years. And I said, okay, Josh, do you want to keep doing what you're doing, right? Do you want to be the processing manager, focus all of your time, energy, 100% of it in processing, and build that out and build your career out over that? Or do you want to do something else? And this was this internal struggle, and I had to make a decision, right? It was either go with processing, hit the ground running, and just continue to, figure that out. Or there was this opportunity to, hey, come back home to wholesale, right? Go back to your bread and butter, right? Go back into that world and that department and become an account executive and start doing that. And at first it was a difficult decision for me, because I was going from processing and a nice salary, right? Steady salary job, to an all sales, all commission, right? You eat what you kill, basically, type of thing. And that was scary, right? That was risky. But the more I thought about it, I just had that internal feeling, that instinct of like, this is the right decision. I just got to go with it, right? I was kind of teetering with it, and I was just like, we just have to go with it. So yeah. So last January 2020, I officially entered wholesale as an account executive. And 2020 is, everyone knows the story of 2020. It was completely crazy. Loans were essentially falling out of the sky. But what was super unique to me wasn't just the production. It wasn't just the loans. It was me having the ability to now reach back out to these brokers, reach back out to these other mortgage professionals within this industry, and develop relationships with them. And everything that I just talked about, all of my experience, starting at Providence, going to Ethos, and now here at Princeton, it was almost like it was meant to be. Like, looking back on it, all of those experiences was just building me up, and it was molding me to be this account executive.
Yeah.
Because I entered this account executive role having all that experience, having been in processing, having, experience underwriting, having been in closing. So like, I already had those skill sets. I already had that knowledge.
Right.
So
Seen it all.
Yeah, I had seen it all. And then the whole, the bigger picture, just servicing in general, right? I was able to have conversations and create relationships and things like that. So all of that was just packaged up, and it was almost like it was sitting there for me. And it was just like, all right, Josh, take it, open it up, and run with it as an account executive. And that's what I did. That's it was looking back on it. everyone asks me, well, what's your biggest regret? Blah, blah, blah. I guess my biggest regret is that I didn't do this earlier. If I had to pick one, I'm not a guy that likes to say, that I regret a lot of things, but if I had to pick one, it would be that, I didn't do this earlier, because I don't know if it was an idea of fear, which it probably was. But I should have just jumped into it earlier. I should have just hit the ground running with this earlier, but I'm glad I did, right? I wouldn't have it any other way. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, obviously, you said it, like that eat what you kill mentality. So it's hard to just be like, yeah, I'm going to go into whole commission and leave that like cushion of safety or whatever. But like on that same like wavelength, like what has prepared you, like since you've gotten into like the AE side of things, in terms of like the sales trainings or like the Princeton selling system or like the culture at Princeton, Princeton in general.
Yeah.
What has kind of prepared you like for being an AE, like to help you not be so nervous and kind of excel into where you are now in sales?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything you said, right? I think the first week that I officially came into being an account executive, I read the Princeton selling system. It was something I wanted to learn that I didn't know much about. So I just dove into that, and I started applying those techniques and those strategies, almost immediately on my conversations with brokers and things like that. The experience piece of it, is a no-brainer. Obviously, I had 9 years under my belt of experience in the mortgage industry, so that that right there, helps build your confidence. And then it was just the true desire and the true passion to create relationships. One thing I always tell, we have new account executives and new business development, people that start and they're starting fresh right out of school, or they're starting from a different position. And one thing I always say is when you're having these conversations with whoever you're having them with, and you want to sign up a new broker or you want a new loan, right? And you're calling these people because maybe your pipeline's not as big and you need more loans. Going into these conversations, not expecting anything out of them is the best thing you could do. And what I mean by that is if I call a new broker right now, and my expectation calling a new broker is to get them to sign up with us on that phone call, 99% of the time I'm going to be let down, right? So if I'm tying myself to the result and not the actual process and the conversation of calling these people, I'm just going to be let down, right? So I've learned and I've taught myself throughout this year, just through experience, having these conversations, that I need to love the process. I need to be passionate about the phone call and what the other person on the other line is actually telling me about their life, versus me just wanting to go into that and say, hey, can I have a loan, or can you sign up with us, right? And the more you can get away from it just being a transactional phone call or a transactional process, the more you start to develop these relationships, the more people start to trust you, and then you start to develop self-confidence, and then you start to kind of build this momentum. And if you can keep building off of that and just having those types of phone calls versus calling people up and asking for business, that's something that I've really focused on. That's something that I just learned throughout this year is having that true desire to get to know the other person and truly care about what they're saying on the other line.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously it's paying off for you. Is it like, are the new class of AEs and BDAs, are they embracing that kind of idea? Or are they like kind of hesitant to like kind of follow those same suits as you were saying, like, or what has been their feedback from that?
Yeah, I think they are. I think that, someone like them, right, coming in here fresh, not having any experience in this industry, it could be extremely scary. And then you start to hear about, hey, well, you have to build your pipeline, or you have to build your broker base. And then it's so natural to think of it just as a transaction, like, oh, I just need more business. And like, that's how I want my career to go. And that's why every chance I get when I'm talking to, anyone really that is asking me about these questions, I always try and bring this up. I always try and hammer it home that like, you have to be in love with the actual process, not the end result. And that's step one, right? You have to first start out that way. If you go into it not starting out that way, you could be as confident as possible on the phone. You could be as confident as possible, in communication with these new people. It's just not going to matter. You're not going to create long-term relationships. And I think that, the new class of people and future new classes, I think that's something that we're always going to hammer in training any opportunity we get. And that's not just in wholesale, right? I think we're just, it's an extreme parallel between Princeton's culture in general, whether it's wholesale, retail, or whatever department you're in. It's something that you can pick and choose, and you can see happening in every single department, right? It's just this overall culture and this overall idea. So that's why we push it so hard, and that's why not only wholesale has been successful over these past years, but just Princeton in general. I think it's something that we stayed consistent with.
Yeah, you hear it a lot. Like, we don't sell, deliver value. There's more the mindset. Don't sell. I hear that so much. I see it in some of the marketing materials all the time. So what gets you excited, man, for like housing or lending or just Princeton Wholesale in general? Obviously, you've been around the industry for 10 plus years, 10ish years. You've been at a couple different companies. You've been at Princeton Wholesale since the jump. So like, what's getting you excited for the future?
It's the unknown, really, to be honest with you. But in like a very strategic way. So like myself, I had a really good year last year, right? But I'm the type of person that I'm not going to look at that and just kind of take this year off, right? I've set the baseline, right? I've set the baseline for myself last year. Every external thing out of it, right? The rates did what they did, and coronavirus had an impact, whatever it was, but I still set that baseline. So it's what I get excited about is this upcoming year. Okay, Josh, well, you're going to have to challenge yourself to outdo yourself last year. How are you going to do that, right? It's not just going to happen. Like, even if I work a little bit harder this next year, that's not going to guarantee that I have a better year this upcoming year than I did last year. It's being strategic about it. It's actually having a plan. It's setting goals. It's, OKRs, right? Objectives and key results. It's like really, really leaning on those and really looking at myself and saying internally, what do you want out of the next 5 years, right? Do you want to just keep riding this wave, or do you want to like go to the next level and then go to the next level and go to the next level? It's those opportunities that, sure, I'm so grateful for everything that has already happened, but moving forward and like keeping the train moving forward is what I really get excited about. It's this idea of, okay, starting at square one again this year, right? And that's kind of my mindset that I approach every single day. It's regardless of how many loans I closed yesterday or this past week, every day I wake up, start at square one, right? Start at square one, and the score is 0-0, right? Every single day. So it's just that mindset, and that's what really gets me excited. It's that competitive nature in me. That I'm extremely competitive, period, but I'm the most competitive with myself, right? And I always want to make sure that I'm outdoing myself. So I just look at this upcoming year, these upcoming next 3, 5, 10 years is just that, right? That's what really gets me excited is the what if. It's the unknown, but it's preparing for it and making sure that I'm hitting my goals. And if I'm not, right, then I need to switch something up. I need to adjust my goals, right? I need to make sure that I'm maximizing my full potential in every way possible.
Yeah, man, nothing's guaranteed, right? It's like if you get comfortable, then you're losing, so to speak.
That's the thing. Yeah. If you're comfortable, exactly. If you find yourself comfortable and you find yourself just kicking the feet up, then you've already lost, or you're already behind the eight ball, because there's some other account executive, it's some other lender, or maybe there's someone right at a different job that's going to come into this account executive job and be coming for me, right? Or it's someone that is always going to be working harder. So if you just have that mindset, that's the motivation that you need right there.
Sure. Yeah. keeps you going, keeps the fire under you.
Exactly. And keeps you honest.
Yeah. All right, man. So you gave us the journey from like top to bottom. So I'm gonna ask you just some rapid fire questions that have not really a lot to do with the mortgage industry, because we got the idea about the mortgage industry. We got the idea about your journey to Princeton Wholesale. So if you weren't working in the mortgage industry and you could do anything, what would you be doing?
Oh, wow. I've always been super passionate about, and this is funny, but just about music. Like, I love listening to music. I think music is something that I'm always going to be passionate about. I love all sorts of music. So if I wasn't doing this, I probably would, and I don't know if I wouldn't be a musician. I don't think, maybe I would be, but it would be something within that industry, I think. Because it's super interesting to me, and I listen to music every single day, and I'm always excited about what's coming out and things like that. So it's probably something within that industry.
I feel like you saw my line of questions, because my next question is, what is your go-to musical artist at any time of the day, no matter the circumstance? I feel like you just are like looking at my screen right now.
Yeah. So this is a good one. No matter the day, no matter the circumstance, I can always listen to me some Mumford and Sons, some Lumineers. those are probably my whatever it is, whatever the situation is, I can always turn those on and be rocking out.
Cool. So you're in the like I don't even know. I want to say like modern folk. Where is that what that would be called? I don't know what that genre is called. It's like
yeah, I think you could call it that. But then, you know, if I'm working out, it has to be some type of crazy, you know, hip hop or, you know, some crazy insane music that just gets me hyped, right? So it's just, but you could still work out to Mumford & Sons and Lumineers in my eyes.
You work out to anything.
Yeah.
Whatever gets you going. All right. So what is the last reality garbage TV show you watched?
Oh, dude, this was huge on my list. Last night we were just watching Southern Charm.
I didn't know you were going to say last night.
No, dude, I'm locked into all these, you know, garbage reality TV shows. They're super interesting to me. So, you know, we have the schedule every Monday. We watch Below Deck on Bravo. Pretty much anything on Bravo is you know, always interests me. I could always catch myself watching it.
My wife has like the whole lineup on DVR. It's like our DVR is 100% full, and it's just like Housewives of XYZ and
There's so many
Southern
Charm, so many housewives. Yeah,
all those shows. All right, favorite superhero?
Batman.
Batman. Why Batman?
I just love his character, right? The whole Bruce Wayne being one person, being this billionaire, and then at night he goes and fights crime and no one knows who he is. I just love that mystique about him. And I love the movies, like the recent Batman movies, all the way back to the originals.
I like Batman a lot. I'm excited for the new one coming out. I don't know if it's going to be any good, but you know, it just always excites me when there's a new one coming out with
I agree.
The guy from the vampire movies. I can't think of his name. I'm drawing a blank, but whatever. I'm excited for it. So yeah, you're kind of like the Batman of Princeton Wholesale. You're a superhero. You've been in every corner of the company, lurking in the dark, saving our loans. No, but really, Josh, I appreciate you taking the time to you know, sit here and have an effortless conversation just about your journey throughout the mortgage industry and where you ended up at Princeton Wholesale and just where you're going. So thanks a lot for jumping on the call today.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Super grateful for it. Grateful for this opportunity and grateful to share my story. This has been an effortless conversation with Josh Teti, and I'm on the journey to 50,000 lens.